Training camps are heating up, and I've got my top 10 NFL defenses you should target for drafts and preparations for the 2025 NFL fantasy football season. And coming in at number 10, the Seattle Seahawks. Last season, the Seahawks averaged 8.2 fantasy points per game, the 5th most, while compiling 45 sacks, which happened to be the 10th most. Seattle's top 4 players in the sack department, they are all returning, led by Leonard Williams, who finished the 2024 season with 11 sacks of his own. The 26 touchdowns that the Seahawks had surrendered, that's in the middle of the pack defensively, but the 13 interceptions, that was the 12th most. Coming in at number 9, the Los Angeles Rams. Yes, the Los Angeles Rams have one of the best defensive fronts in all of football. Braden Feskey, Poona Ford, Kobe Turner. Last season, Fisk and Turner, they had 8.5 and 8 sacks respectively, while Byron Young and Jared Verse added an additional 12 sacks to that overall team total. The biggest issue facing the Los Angeles Rams, who is going to make the tackles? More specifically, who is going to step up in that linebackers room there with Christian Rosenboom and his 135 total tackles no longer around? Now coming in at number 8, how about the Green Bay Packers? Green Bay's inclusion here, it's not sexy. However, it is a necessity when we're talking about fantasy football, considering that this defense was the 3rd highest scoring unit in all of fantasy last season, averaging 8.9 fantasy points per game. The band is all back together. Green Bay had 6 players record 85 or more tackles. Quay Walker, Isaiah McDuffie, Javon Bullard, Keyshawn Nixon there, Xavier McKinney and Edgerrin Cooper. McKinney, he had 8 interceptions. That was the 2nd most behind Kirby Joseph of the Detroit Lions last season. Green Bay was also persistent at getting after the quarterback, registering 45 sacks and doing it with a committee approach. This committee, it returns their top 9 sack getters from a season ago. Coming in at number 7, the Buffalo Bills. Buffalo, they could move up this list if they can find a way to get consistent pressure on opposing quarterbacks. Last season, Buffalo finished 6th in fantasy scoring, averaging 8.1 fantasy points per game. They forced as many turnovers, 32, as they had sacks, 39. Matt Milano, he is healthy again, which should give this defense a huge boost, as should the addition of Joey Bosa, as long as he is healthy, playing opposite of Greg Rousseau. Rousseau, he led this Bills team with 8 sacks, and if Bosa can remain healthy, his presence alone should push Rousseau over the double-digit territory, that threshold there that makes you an elite playmaker on the defensive side of the ball. Adding pressure up front should lead to more turnovers on the back end. Buffalo is going to look to increase that total from 2024, which is no simple task, considering they had 16 interceptions last season, which happened to be the 5th most. Coming in at number 6, it's the Houston Texans, just missing out on the top 5. Last season, the Texans ranked 4th in sacks with 49, 2nd in interceptions with 19, and 8th in fantasy points per game with 8. Houston, they had some big weeks for fantasy managers, topping 10 or more fantasy points on 7 separate occasions. In 2 NFL seasons, Will Anderson Jr., he has shown and proven, going from 7 sacks his rookie season to 11 sacks last season. He plays opposite of Donnelly Hunter, who once again recorded 10+ sacks for the 5th time in 6 seasons. It's not just that Houston has one of the most deadly edge duels in the game today. The secondary also features a pair of ball-hawking playmakers in Derek Stingley and Kalen Bullock, who each had 5 picks last season. And if that wasn't enough, Houston went out and they added C.J. Garner-Johnson to the mix, whose resume includes 18 career interceptions in 75 contests. At number 5, we have T.J. Watt and the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's right, Watt's presence in this Steelers lineup is more than enough to justify the team's top 5 ranking. The $125 million man, he has registered 108 sacks in 121 regular season contests, including 30.5 sacks over the last 2 years. Joey Porter Jr., he has proven to be an elite defender in the secondary in just 2 seasons. He's recorded 17 pass breakups in 33 career games, and he finished 2024 with 70 total tackles. Last season, teams were avoiding Porter. This season, they may not be able to do that with the addition of All-Pro Jalen Ramsey. Coming in at number 4, it's the Minnesota Vikings, who managed to reach double-digit fantasy production in at least half of their contests, thanks to a league-best 24 interceptions and 49 sacks, which ranked 5th. Now, Minnesota, they were one of just 2 teams to average at least 9 fantasy points per contest. Minnesota lost some key pieces to this defense, but Jonathan Greenard and Andrew Van Ginkel both remain in Brian Flores' aggressive scheme, which led the duo to recording 23.5 sacks last season. At number 3, we had the Super Bowl champions, the Philadelphia Eagles. Philadelphia lost some key contributors there, including Milton Williams, Josh Sweet, Brandon Graham, Darius Slade. That trio helped the Eagles record 41 sacks and 13 interceptions and 8.1 fantasy points per game. However, the Eagles and Howie Roseman, they have been drafting well over the years, and they can get after the quarterback with both interior pressure, courtesy of Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter, or they can attack off the edge with Zach Bond and Nolan Smith Jr. At number 2, arguably the most complete roster in the NFL, the Baltimore Ravens. Baltimore, they had no issue getting after the quarterback. They produced 54 sacks, the second most last season. Their issue is that they couldn't stop the pass early on in the 2024 season. In fact, they didn't even register a double-digit fantasy week until week number 9. However, eventually, the Ravens, they got their secondary sorted out, and they finished the last 2 weeks of the season scoring 31 fantasy points. Baltimore is much better positioned in the secondary heading into the 2025 season thanks to the signing of Jair Alexander and the selection of Malachi Starks there in this past April's draft. The Georgia product is a big play threat on every dropback. As a junior, Starks would finish the campaign with 6 interceptions. That nose for the ball, that doesn't end in coverage either, as he wasn't afraid to come downhill and defend on the run. And at number 1, it's the Denver Broncos, last year's top fantasy finisher. They're going to be this year's top fantasy finisher as well. Denver was the only team to average more than 10 fantasy points last season, averaging 10.3 per contest, thanks to 15 interceptions and a league-high 63 sacks. Those 63 sacks, that was 9 more than the next closest team, the aforementioned Baltimore Ravens. Nick Bonito, 13.5. Jonathan Cooper, 10.5. Zach Allen, his monster new contract. They are all back in the fold for the Broncos. So that sack total, it isn't going anywhere. If that wasn't enough to keep offensive coordinators awake at night, Denver spent money in free agency on their defense, adding Drew Greenlaw, DJ Jones, and Talahafunga. That wraps up another RotoBaller Sports YouTube video. Make sure to hit that like button and make sure you are subscribed, as that was Matt Donnelly's top 10 DSTs heading into the 2025 NFL season. We'll see you next time.